I should have died that night, but something incredible happened, and it changed my life forever. Before I tell you this story that will challenge everything you believe about miracles, I want to know, what city are you watching this from? It's important for me to know where this story can reach, because I truly believe it's not by accident that you're here watching this video right now. There's something bigger at work here, something that brought you to this moment, to this story. Go ahead, pause for a second and leave a comment with your city. I read every single one, and I pray for each person who shares their location with me. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just my story, it's a message of hope that needs to reach hearts all over the world. My name is Maria Elena Rodriguez, I'm 28 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I was just another invisible person living an invisible life. I worked at a small family-owned coffee shop called Morning Glory in downtown Springfield. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., my alarm would go off, and I'd drag myself out of bed in my tiny studio apartment above Mrs. Chen's grocery store. Maybe you know what that feels like, waking up to the same routine, day after day, wondering if this is all there is to life, wondering if you really matter to anyone, if your existence makes any difference at all. I used to look at successful people on social media and think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I figure out my purpose, like everyone else seems to have? I want you to know that if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever questioned your worth, if you've ever wondered whether God really sees you in your ordinary, everyday struggles, this story is especially for you. Let me paint you a picture of who I was before everything changed. Every weekday, I'd open Morning Glory at 5 a.m. The bell above the door would jingle as our regulars came in. There was Mr. Patterson, a retired teacher who always ordered a black coffee and a blueberry muffin, and would tell me stories about his late wife, Margaret. There was Jessica, a young mom who worked 2 jobs and always looked exhausted, ordering her triple shot latte while bouncing her baby on her hip. I knew their orders by heart, but I wondered if they really saw me as anything more than the girl who made their coffee. Did they know I stayed up some nights worrying about rent? Did they know I'd been saving for 3 years to maybe take some online business classes? But every time I got close to having enough money, something would happen. My car would break down, or I'd get sick and miss work. My mother, God bless her, called me every Sunday from our hometown in Texas. Mia, she'd say, when are you going to find a real job? When are you going to give me grandchildren? And I'd sit there on my second-hand couch, looking around my tiny apartment, with its peeling paint, and the radiator that never worked quite right, wondering the same thing. I wasn't completely faithless, I believed in God the way most people do. I'd pray when I was really scared or stressed, like when I had to choose between groceries and my phone bill. I'd go to church on Christmas and Easter, sitting in the back row, feeling like I didn't quite belong with all those families in their nice clothes who seemed to have their lives figured out. But deep down, I carried this ache, this longing for something more. Have you ever felt that? That sense that you were meant for something bigger, but you can't figure out what it is? That maybe God forgot about you when He was handing out purposes and callings. I used to lie awake at night, listening to the city sounds outside my window, and wonder if this was it. If I was going to spend my whole life serving coffee to other people, living their dreams while I stayed stuck in survival mode. I'd pray sometimes, but they were desperate prayers, not the kind filled with faith and confidence you hear about in church. God, if you're really there, I'd whisper into my pillow, please show me why I'm here. Please let my life mean something. I had no idea He was listening. I had no idea He was preparing to answer that prayer in a way that would shake me to my very core. November 8th started like any other Thursday, except Mrs. Garcia, the shop owner, asked if I could stay late to help with the monthly inventory. We'd gotten behind because our supplier had delivered the wrong coffee beans twice that week, and everything was chaos. I'll pay you overtime, Mia, she said, and I couldn't say no. Every extra dollar mattered to me back then. So while most people were heading home to their families and their warm dinners, I was counting bags of coffee beans and boxes of pastry mix in the back room of Morning Glory. By the time we finished, it was almost 11 p.m. The streets were quiet. That eerie kind of quiet you only get in small cities late at night. I remember thinking about how different the world looks when everyone else is asleep, like you're the only person left on Earth. My car, a 2006 Honda Civic with 180,000 miles on it, started on the third try. The radio was acting up, switching between stations on its own, so I kept fiddling with it as I drove. The roads were slick from rain earlier that evening, and I should have been paying closer attention, but I was tired, distracted, thinking about whether I'd have enough energy to do laundry when I got home. I was about 10 minutes from my apartment when something made me reach into my purse at a red light. I was looking for my phone to check the time, and my fingers found something I'd forgotten about, a small prayer card my grandmother had given me 2 weeks earlier. My abuela Rosa had been staying with my cousin in Arizona, and she'd sent me this card in the mail with a note that said, "Pray to this young saint, Mia. He performs miracles for young people who need hope." The card had a picture of a teenager with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Carlo Acutis, it said. I'd never heard of him before. The back of the card had a prayer, but I'd just tucked it into my wallet and forgotten about it. Why would a teenager be a saint? What could someone so young possibly understand about real-life struggles? But holding that card at the red light that night, something stirred in me. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was loneliness, but I found myself whispering, "Carlo, if you're really up there, if you really help people, I could use some help figuring out what I'm supposed to do with my life." The light turned green, and I put the card back in my purse, feeling a little silly for talking to a picture. I had no idea that prayer was about to be answered in the most dramatic way possible. 3 minutes later, everything changed forever. Route 34 is a straight highway that connects downtown Springfield to the residential area where I lived. I'd driven it thousands of times, knew every curve and every traffic light. But that night, about 2 miles from my apartment, I came over a small hill and saw something that made my blood turn to ice. A semi-truck was jackknifed across both lanes of the highway. The trailer was completely sideways, blocking the entire road like a massive metal wall. The driver must have hit a patch of black ice and lost control. There were no warning lights, no flares, no police cars yet. Just this enormous obstacle appearing out of nowhere, in my headlights. I had maybe 3 seconds to react. I slammed on my brakes, feeling my small car start to skid on the wet pavement. Time slowed down in that strange way it does during emergencies. I could see every detail with crystal clarity, the mud flaps on the trailer, the reflective tape on the side, even some text that was painted there. I yanked the steering wheel to the right, trying to find the shoulder of the road, but there wasn't one. Just a steep drop-off into a concrete drainage ditch. My car hit the guardrail at about 40 miles per hour, went airborne, and flipped end over end 3 times before slamming into the concrete wall at the bottom of the ditch. The sound was indescribable, like the world was being torn apart. Metal screaming against metal, glass exploding, my own voice crying out in terror. The airbag deployed, hitting me in the face like a punch, and then everything went quiet, except for the hissing of steam and the smell of gasoline filling the air. I was hanging upside down, held in place by my seatbelt. My left arm was twisted at an angle that arms aren't supposed to twist. I could taste blood in my mouth, and when I tried to breathe, it felt like someone was sitting on my chest. The roof of my car had caved in, and I was trapped in a space that felt like a metal coffin. That's when the real terror set in. I was alone, upside down in a ditch, in a car that was leaking gasoline, and no one knew where I was. My phone had flown somewhere into the wreckage where I couldn't reach it. I tried to call out for help, but my voice was barely a whisper. "Please," I whispered into the darkness. "Please, somebody help me." But there were no lights, no sounds of traffic above. Just me, bleeding and broken, wondering if this was really how my story would end. And that's when I remembered the prayer card. It was still in my purse, which was somehow still hanging from my shoulder. With my right hand, the only one I could move, I managed to pull out that card of Carlo Acutis. Looking at his face through my tears and blood, I whispered what I thought might be my last prayer. "Carlo, I don't know if you're real, but I'm scared, and I don't want to die alone. Please, if you can hear me, please help me." What happened next defies everything I thought I knew about the world. At first I thought I was losing consciousness from blood loss. The pain in my chest was getting worse, and I could feel myself getting weaker. But instead of everything going black, something extraordinary began to happen. The cramped, terrifying space inside my crushed car started to feel different, larger somehow, and then I realized I wasn't feeling the pain anymore. In fact, I wasn't feeling my body at all. I looked down and saw myself, my physical body still trapped in the car, still bleeding, still unconscious now. But I was floating above it all, watching from about 10 feet in the air. I should have been terrified, but instead, I felt the most incredible sense of peace I'd ever experienced. Have you ever had a dream where you could fly? It was like that, but 1,000 times more real than any dream. I was still me, I could think, I could observe, I was completely aware of everything happening, but I was no longer confined to my broken body. The colors around me were unlike anything that exists in our physical world. The darkness of the night was shot through with streams of golden light that seemed to pulse with life. I could hear music, but not with my ears. It was like the sound was coming from inside my very soul. Harmonies that made me want to cry with joy, even though I no longer had physical eyes to cry with, and I wasn't alone. There was a presence with me, warm and familiar, like someone I'd known my whole life, but had forgotten, until this moment. I turned, or thought I turned, since I wasn't sure I had a body that could turn, and saw him. Carlo Acutis stood beside me, but not as a photograph or a painting. This was him, real and alive, and radiating joy that was almost too beautiful to bear. He looked exactly like he had in the prayer card, but his presence was so much more than any image could capture. He smiled at me, and in that smile was understanding, compassion, and something else, recognition. Like he'd been waiting for me. Like this moment had been planned long before I was born. "Maria," he said, though I'm not sure if I heard it or just knew it. His voice was warm, filled with the kind of love I'd been searching for my whole life, without even knowing it. "Am I dead?" I asked him, surprised that I could still speak, or think, or whatever this was. His smile grew wider. "You're more alive than you've ever been," he said. "But you're not staying here. Not yet. You have work to do." What Carlo showed me next changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and purpose. He gestured, and suddenly we were moving through space, not walking, not flying, but somehow traveling through dimensions I can't adequately describe. We went to what I can only call a place of pure love. Imagine the warmest embrace you've ever received, the safest you've ever felt, the most accepted and cherished you've ever been, and multiply that by infinity. That's the closest I can come to describing where Carlo brought me. But this wasn't just about feeling good. This was about seeing truth, understanding reality, in a way that our limited human minds normally can't grasp. Carlo showed me my life, but not like watching a movie. Instead, I experienced the impact of every choice I'd ever made, every word I'd ever spoken, every act of kindness or moment of selfishness. But it wasn't judgment, it was revelation. That time in high school, when I'd sat with the new girl Elena, at lunch because she looked lonely. I saw the ripple effect of that kindness, how it gave her confidence to try out for drama club, where she met her best friend, who later introduced her to her husband. They now have 2 children, and run a non-profit that helps at-risk youth. The morning I'd given my umbrella to Mr. Patterson, when he'd forgotten his, I saw how that simple gesture reminded him of his late wife's kindness, and helped him through a particularly difficult day of grief. He went home, and called his estranged son for the first time in months, beginning a reconciliation that healed their relationship before it was too late. Even the coffee I served, with genuine care and attention, I saw customers who came to Morning Glory, not just for caffeine, but for the human connection, the smile, the few minutes of feeling seen and cared for by another person. "Do you see?" Carlo asked me. "There are no small acts of love. Every moment of genuine care creates waves of light that reach farther than you could ever imagine." But he also showed me the missed opportunities. The times I was so wrapped up in my own problems that I didn't notice when someone needed encouragement. The customer who was clearly struggling, whom I served efficiently, but coldly because I was having a bad day. The elderly woman who tried to start conversations with me while I was impatient to move on to the next person in line. I saw how my self-doubt and feelings of insignificance had sometimes prevented me from reaching out, from offering the compassion that was natural to my heart. Not because I was a bad person, but because I hadn't understood how much my small contributions to the world actually mattered. "This is why you're here," Carlo explained. And somehow, I understood he meant not just in this heavenly realm, but in life itself, to love, to serve, to be the hands and heart of God in ordinary moments that are actually extraordinary. Then he showed me something that took my breath away, if I still had breath to take. I saw my grandmother, my abuela Rosa, praying for me. Not just recently, but for years, lighting candles and whispering my name in her evening prayers. I saw my mother, worried about me but not knowing how to express it except through her questions about jobs and marriage. And I saw something that made me weep with joy. There were people I'd never even noticed who had been praying for me. Mrs. Chen, from the grocery store below my apartment, who had watched me struggle, and had been asking God to bless me. Jessica, the young mom from the coffee shop, who had seen something of herself in me, and had been praying that I'd find my way. "You are seen," Carlo told me. "You are loved. You have never been invisible or forgotten, not for a single moment. But then came the moment I'll never forget, the choice. Carlo's expression grew more serious, though still filled with love. Maria, you can stay here, he said, and I could feel the truth of it. The peace, the love, the end of all struggle and uncertainty. No more worrying about rent, no more feeling lost or purposeless, no more loneliness or fear. Or, he continued, you can return. Your body is badly hurt, but healing is possible. Miraculous healing. You can go back and live the life you now understand you were meant to live. The decision was agonizing. How do you choose pain over peace? How do you choose the uncertainty of human life over the perfect love of heaven? But as I wrestled with the choice, Carlo showed me one more thing. He showed me faces, people I hadn't met yet, but would. A teenage girl contemplating suicide, who would hear my story and choose to live. A man who had lost faith after his wife's death, who would rediscover hope through my testimony. Families torn apart by grief, who would find comfort in understanding that death is not the end. Your real life is just beginning, Carlo said softly. Everything that happened before was preparation. The struggles, the doubts, the feelings of insignificance, they were all preparing you to understand and help others who feel the same way. I looked one more time at the indescribable beauty around me, felt one more moment of that perfect peace, and then made the choice that brought me back to you today. I'll go back, I whispered. Carlo's smile was radiant. I'll be with you, he promised. When you doubt, when you're afraid, when you wonder if this was real, remember this moment. Remember that you are never alone, and your life has a purpose greater than you can imagine. Coming back to my body was like being hit by a lightning bolt of sensation and pain. But even as agony crashed over me in waves, I felt something impossible. Hope. Not just hope, but certainty. I knew I was going to be okay, not because the circumstances looked good, but because I'd been promised. When the paramedics found me 20 minutes later, alerted by a passing truck driver who finally saw my car in the ditch, they said it was miraculous I was still alive. My injuries were severe: 3 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, internal bleeding, a shattered left arm, and a concussion. But here's where the story gets truly incredible. From the moment I arrived at the hospital, things began happening that the medical staff couldn't explain. The internal bleeding that should have killed me had mysteriously stopped. My collapsed lung reinflated on its own. The broken bones in my arm were healing at a rate that defied medical explanation. Dr. Harrison, the emergency room physician, kept running tests because he couldn't believe what he was seeing. In 30 years of medicine, he told my mother when she flew in from Texas, I've never seen anything like this. Her recovery isn't just unusual, it's impossible. But I knew exactly what was happening. Carlo Acutis, this young saint who understood the power of faith in miracles, was keeping his promise. He was interceding for my healing, just as he continues to intercede for people all over the world, who call on him in their desperate moments. The prayer card that had been in my purse during the accident was found by one of the rescue workers. It was completely undamaged, not even wet from the rain, even though everything else in my car was soaked or destroyed. The paramedic handed it to me in the hospital, and I clutched it like a lifeline. Within a week I was walking. Within 2 weeks, my arm had healed completely. The doctors discharged me with a clean bill of health, and no explanation for what they'd witnessed. But the real miracle wasn't just my physical healing. It was the complete transformation of my heart, my purpose, and my understanding of why I'm here. I went back to work at Morning Glory, but everything was different. Every customer became someone I could love and serve with intent. Every ordinary moment became an opportunity to practice the faith that had been so powerfully renewed within me. I started carrying prayer cards of Carlo Acutis, giving them to people who seemed lost or struggling, sharing my story with anyone who would listen. And do you know what I discovered? Miracles didn't stop with my healing. They keep happening, every single day. People have been healed through his intercession. Relationships have been restored. Lost souls have found their way back to faith. All because this young man, who lived only 15 years on earth, continues to show us that our ordinary lives can have extraordinary impact when we live them for love. Today, I know why I'm here. I'm here to tell you that you matter more than you know. Your struggles, your doubts, your seemingly small life, none of it is insignificant. God sees you, loves you, and has a purpose for you that's greater than you can imagine. And if you're watching this video, if my story has reached your heart across whatever distance separates us, then I believe Carlo Acutis may be interceding for you too. It's not an accident that you're here. It's not a coincidence that these words found you today. Miracles are still happening. Hope is still real. And your life, your beautiful, important, significant life, is just waiting for you to see it, the way heaven sees it. Don't wait for a near-death experience to discover your worth. You are loved, you are seen, and you are here for a reason. Ask Carlo Acutis to help you see it. Trust me, he's listening, and he's ready to show you miracles you never thought possible.